Yeah, great question. It's a very organized, systematic process. No, not at all. It's messy. It's messy, it's organic. There are elements of spontaneity and opportunism and elements of systematic thinking. For instance, the capstones originally, which then became the basis for a lot of future work, I think very much came about by the randomness of faculty knowing people, people happening to come to the university, alumni working for certain organizations, and therefore being approached. Out of that developed a practice, a history, an expertise. As I said, we chose certain fields where we could grow because the traditional universities hadn't already preempted it. So that was, you can say it was random, it was political. People talked about urban fields, urban planning, social work, public administration. It was very hard for the downstate campuses to claim that an urban university shouldn't be doing those things. So that's where we developed strengths. Out of that then grew, the faculty research related to that. Where we became very systematic was in about 2007-08 when the campus had the discussion about, is there a substantive area which we can really claim as our own, where we're going to be better. We're better than others already, we can be even better. And out of that came the sustainability. So that was a very organized, but it was also driven by the notion, this is something that's Portland's brand. Portland and Oregon already have a reputation. Our faculty in urban planning were a big part of the urban growth boundary. All those debates that made Portland the model for sustainability. So that was the systematic part. Right around that same time, the city of Portland was going through a economic development plan effort, and we then married our economic development planning effort very much to the Portland one. We said, okay, what are the cluster industries that the city, that the urban region is focusing on? What are we doing with those industries? And out of that came, for instance, focus on the metals industry, which, we weren't going to really do very much on, but it was very clear that became very important. The outdoor and apparel industry, very important. Certainly Intel, of course. So we did definitely marry it by looking at their economic development planning and then saying we better make sure that we match those things. Now, again, how do we do that? Well, then a dean of engineering says, oh, I'm going to hire in this area. Let's go with the industry to the legislature to get some money. Again, he can't tell a faculty member who doesn't want to do that work to go do that work. It's never been about in any way stopping the normal process of faculty shape their own research, but it has been about saying, let's hire people in this field. Let's create faculty incentive grants to work in the sustainability area or to work with K through 12. And that's how we steer it then. Is it a comprehensive analysis of the total needs of the metropolitan area? No, it isn't. Right now, friends, we're doing a lot of work with a group called Communities of Color about the racial and ethnic inequities in Portland. Like this part of the country, it always was very homogeneous. People didn't really see the minority groups very much, and they thought that, well, to the extent that there are minority groups here, no doubt they're doing very well because we're such a liberal, progressive community. And then actually we found out that no, in Portland they do worse than in many other places. Now clearly that's a need, but it came out of the work of faculty members in social work who wanted to do that work. It wasn't sort of a grant analysis from the top to say, oh, we got to do this. Does that answer it a bit? Yes. Thank you. Yes, please.
I've heard that Portland is a place where 20-somethings go to retire. And I'm wondering if you've noticed that phenomenon at Portland State, and what role would an urban serving university have in an urban setting where that's the case?
Yeah. Well, actually, in the appropriate style, we have done research on that question. Our Institute for Metropolitan Studies has done a variety of studies, both surveys and just analysis of employment data, to figure out what the truth of that is. And it really isn't quite true, but there's some truth to it in the sense that we do attract a lot of highly educated people to Portland, who really do want to work, but on the whole, they don't want to work in traditional settings, and they don't want to work as hard. So the number of hours worked in Portland is lower than our comparison cities, and we look at Seattle a lot, Seattle, Denver, Austin, Minneapolis. Those are, I think, usually sort of our comparators, sometimes Boise and Sacramento as well. So our people work fewer hours. They have more entrepreneurs, more starting their own business, of running their own small businesses. But then when it doesn't work, then they actually leave. So they don't really go to retire. If it doesn't work and they can't make the money, then they actually leave the city and they go somewhere else where, especially during the 08 to 11 period when, the economy was bad, in Portland, we went down quite a lot. Now Oregon is like the 5th fastest growing state in employment in the nation, I think last year or the year before. So we're recovering very nicely. So there is some, it's not totally untrue, but it's certainly not entirely true.
Can you talk a little bit more about the Business Accelerator and whether the companies that come out of that, does the university have a stake, an equity stake in those firms? Do you seed some of that? Is venture capital coming to rest there? Just go into a little more detail on that.
Yeah. Our stake in it, in the companies that are there that were started through faculty research, are in the patent and then the licensing rights. And I forget the exact details of what the cut is, but there's a split between the faculty member and the university if the research was developed with university facilities or grants that were gotten through the university. We don't have equity stakes in the companies themselves. We may do that in the future, but we have not done that. We do not have our own seed fund. It is interesting that the woman who runs the incubator for us also runs one of the angel funds in the Oregon Seed Fund in Portland. So there is a seed fund essentially located there. There's a lot of connections, but it is not our fund. It's not our money. How many have spun out of that? I should know that number, and I forget. So I don't want to make up the number. We've had it for about 7 years now. It's really come into full swing only in the last 4. So we've had a few spin-offs of it. I said the venture capital it's attracted is both from out of state and from in-state itself. So several of them have spun out with, mostly with like between $5 and $20 million investments. They're not humongously big ones. They can only stay there with about 10, 15 employees. After that, they got to graduate out because we can't really accommodate it. The big change that we made a couple of years ago is that we were able to build more wet labs. So that created a whole new stream of companies that can now use that space that really had a problem going into it before. And I'd be happy, to organize a tour or have you come and visit. If you give me your card afterwards and to go into great detail on it. Yes?
So I'm happy to say I'm a graduate of Portland State. And,
hey, go Vikes!
Yeah. Did my graduate work and actually worked as a graduate assistant for the Kiwanis camp. So.
Oh, all right.
Well, so, no, Ann Fullerton well. And my question is on capstones. And I'm really interested on this campus of really encouraging and creating that culture for outreach into the community, and how can we support faculty who want to do that sort of thing. And although I'm on student engagement side, I would like to encourage that, and I tried to push a cart around a little while ago and knock on some doors to see if we can't get some excitement around that, and if student engagement can offer their connections to the community and how. So my question on capstones is there any one particular thing that really pushed you over the top to institutional, take it from a cultural component of just one-off departments doing projects to an overarching capstone as it is right now?
I can't fully answer that question because it happened well before I was there, right? It happened in the mid-90s and I didn't come till 2008. But as I understand it, it was part of this in every university there is unhappiness about the Gen Ed curriculum, right? Because everybody knows it's kind of a mess, it's a mishmash, so over time, nobody knows anymore why certain courses are included or not, and there's no continuity. So as I understand it, Portland State went through its own version of unhappiness about the Gen Ed curriculum, and then they started to really rethink it in a big way that led to both the freshman inquiry, the sophomore inquiry that I described earlier, and the senior capstone. The concept of capstones, of course, has been around forever. The big breakthrough really was to say everybody's got to do it. It's not sort of this thing for certain fields, certain disciplines. No, because there was very much the sense that we create a Gen Ed curriculum for everybody, and that is the final part of the Gen Ed curriculum. So I think it came out of the general, almost generic unhappiness about Gen Ed that then made people do the whole thing. Well, I know okay, one more question. Okay, I don't want to hold people beyond dinner time.
Academics aside, how did students and student leaders help to create the anchor institution?
The notion of the anchor institution? Yeah, no, that's a great question. I guess I would describe it in two ways. That, when Portland State was started, again, it had older students. It had these veterans coming back from the war. These were people who were used to running stuff, right? I mean, this is the greatest generation. These were the guys who liberated Europe. So they weren't going to just sort of be meek little students. They were very important partners in running the institution. And they were actually the ones who fought for it to become a college and then to become a university. It was a fight that was led by the students in a very significant way. It wasn't the administration, because the administration was appointed by, the State Board of Higher Ed, which was really run by the University of Oregon and Oregon State. So it was very much a bottom-up pressure, and that attitude of student empowerment has very much remained a big part of Portland State. I have not been at an institution where the students are so empowered, which you may just imagine there are days where, where I'm not quite as enthused about that as other days. So they were the ones who came from Portland, who felt we got to be an institution for Portland, with Portland, in Portland. They didn't want to go down to the valley. So I think it's that pressure that helped create it, and that still continues it now. Our students are all over the emphasis on equity, diversity. They were very involved in the Occupy Portland movement. And as I said, many of them are from Portland, and they choose to come to Portland State because it's the nearest big public university, right? So I don't want to overstate it. But certainly a lot of the others come, and a lot of our students from Portland, they love that engagement. They choose it, they love it. Otherwise, they might go somewhere else. So they're an important constituency for it, for sure. Thank you very much.